cross the Mersey and always take me there, the place I love.
The Merseybeat scene, as it developed, had its origins at the end of the skiffle boom. Now, the skiffle boom affected all the kids throughout the whole of the British Isles, and I think kids in every city took up the musical instruments, guitars and tea-chest basses and all the rest of it. But what happened in Liverpool, when the skiffle boom ended, the kids still wanted to play music. So you had all the Gin Mill Skiffle group and the Darktown Skiffle group. They all began turning into rock bands. One of the earliest was a skiffle group had been called the James Boys, and they turned into King Size Taylor and the Dominoes. And they became one of the most respected bands, and they were going right till the middle of the 60s. Another was Cass and the Casanovas, who later became the Big Three, and Howie Casey and the Seniors. Well, the early music scene in Liverpool began in places we called jive hives, and they were all promotions in local town halls and church halls, run by a number of promoters who had full-time jobs but did the promotions part-time to make a few bob on the side. And these were really the people who gave the original scene its impetus.
Sometimes I will, then again I'll think I won't. Sometimes I will, then again.
The Cavern Club persevered with jazz music right till the beginning of the 60s, and they also continued to have skiffle groups, even though skiffles had died in the rest of the country. And what had happened, the rock groups had become skiffle groups for a night to go in the Cavern because they had to play skiffle, because rock and roll was barred at the Cavern.
There were so many lads out of work, looking for work, that they formed bands influenced by all your music around you, and you sort of spent your free time playing music, and suddenly got gigs, you know, and suddenly it happened from there.
The British rock scene was not very good. It was, oh, it was dreadful. It was horrible. So we copied people like Jerry Lee Lewis, obviously Elvis Presley, Fats Domino, Little Richard, he's still my favourite. We bought very much American.
Well, I think the only thing that was going on in England at that time was the Shadows and you know, Billy Fury and you know, Cliff Richard. They all seemed to be the same.
It was southern music, you see. Yeah. We're from the north, and it didn't. It was too
smooth,
too Mickey Mouse. Didn't have enough, you know. So we invented our own music.
Not surprisingly, a generation brought up on a diet of American comics and movies should look to the USA for its musical influences.
My brother was a sailor, and he used to bring all your Bill Haley records in, and your Hank Williams records in, and your Charlie Gracie records. He used to bring all them in before they were released in England, so you'd have a sort of opportunity to learn them before anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's right. You know, a lot of the bands picked up their material from albums coming in from the States, especially this was what bands used to do, look for numbers that other bands didn't have. And this is the way they get them, find them on American albums coming in.
Merseybeat historian Bill Harry, however, has another theory.
The biggest influence of getting particular rock numbers into Liverpool was a disc jockey called Bob Wooler, who used to go around every single one of the jive hives as a compere with a special selection of records. And the Beatles and all the groups wanted to know what records he had, and they'd compete to be the first to play them. And Bob later became the Cavern DJ, and he was one of the prime movers in the Mersey scene. and he was the one who introduced a lot of these numbers into the bands. And of course, the groups themselves had really try and find out the most obscure or least played rock numbers. And one of the best guys at doing this was Chris Curtis of the Searchers. And the Searchers were able to get quite a number of hits because of his really good selection of songs like Sweets for My Sweet.
Sweets for my sweet, sugar for my honey, your first sweet kiss, girl. You don't need anybody to kiss you.
Billy Kramer got the J in his name from John Lennon, and his backing group, the Dakotas, from Manchester.
I'll keep you satisfied.
I knew, even before it happened, that something was going to happen. There was a tremendous atmosphere that I just cannot explain. You know, once I got off the bus in Liverpool and went down the Cavern or the Iron, I just don't know. It just, I just had this, I don't know what it was. That something was going to happen. It was like ready to explode.
You can always get a simple thing like love anytime, but it's different with a boy like me and a love like mine. So believe everything that I told you and agree that with me by your side. You don't need anybody to hold you. I'll keep you satisfied. Satisfied. You can always get a simple thing like love anytime, but it's different with a boy like me and a love like mine. So believe everything that I told you and agree that with me by your side. You don't need anybody to hold you. I'll keep you satisfied. Oh, give me love and remember what I told you. I'll keep you satisfied.
The very first Liverpool group ever to make a record was Howie Casey and the Seniors. They recorded for Fontana, and one of their singers was Freddie Starr, who's since made it in his own right. And they were almost on the brink of making it. Now, Howie Casey was one of the first bands to go to Hamburg, and he wrote back to Alan Williams pleading, don't send the Beatles across here. We hear you sending them, and they'll ruin it for everyone. They're such a lousy group, you know?
I wanna be your lover, baby. I wanna be your man.